Morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for February 11, 2019. We'll begin with the special order calendar decision items. Item number 1, 10370BZ, 203 East 74th Street, Manhattan.
So there was a cover letter, and it didn't explain why, but the applicant submitted BSA-approved drawings of the 1970 grant, which shows a basement, which is really a cellar, and a 10-story building, which is described really as a 9-story building, but the first floor is real. The ground floor is really the first floor, so that makes it very confusing to read. Which has ground floor commercial and 1.5 apartments on each floor to the 8th floor, and a 9th floor apartments for a total of 13. The cost estimate is for a 10-story building, and there are no zoning calculations included. I think this is submitted to justify the as-built situation that doesn't comply with the 1972 plans. And it would have been really great if the applicant had walked us through the comparison so we didn't have to do this ourselves. So in comparing, it appears that what was built is not actually 7 floors as claimed, but 9 floors, where the 9th and the 7th floors include 2 half apartments that duplex to the floor below, with some double height space, and there's also 1 full apartment. So that is not a mezzanine by any definition of mezzanine. So those are actually floors. The double height space reduced the floor area somewhat, but then the front setback that was approved in the original approval in 1970 was reduced significantly. But the problem is none of the materials, the 1970 materials don't indicate the approved floor area at all anywhere. So all we can do is kind of guesstimate that the total floor area as built is in the ballpark of what was approved. That's all, because there's nothing to go on. And they submitted both the plans and the financials, and we have the resolution on the 1970 approval, and even the resolution skips over the floor area. So I'm just having to assume the 9th floor setback complies with the zoning, because the only thing that we waived here was rear yard in terms of zoning. So any other comments? We already did the Bella Vista, I think last time.
Right, and when they submitted the financials, you could see that they did not take into account the development rights, but the fact that the previous analysis actually went to the adjacent lots to look for receptor sites and showed that there would not be receptor sites was enough to me to satisfy Bella Vista that, they were not going to get a windfall that wasn't considered at the time.
Right. Okay, anybody else?
Item number 2, 40-80BZ, 3541 and 3941 West 23rd Street, 20-22 West 24th Street, Manhattan.
Okay. All right. So this case is similar to the other one. In addition to this being a request to allow transfer of development rights, this is a request to legalize existing conditions that were constructed without BSA approvals. The part of the discussion is about what the correct floor area should have been at the time of the original approval in 1980. The building is a simple, and this was a conversion of an existing building, so it wasn't new construction, right? And the existing building is a simple rectangle, so it's easy to review the floor area calculations manually, which I did. And there are no difference in the dimensions between the 1980 approved plans and the proposed revised plans. So the architects, the 2 different architects agree on the outside dimensions of the building. So therefore, I agree that the original floor area calculations were incorrect and should have been more in the neighborhood of 19,020 square feet instead of 18,243 square feet. So 18,243 was what was shown on the resolution. But that doesn't make sense if you just measure the outside of the building. The approved plans always showed an elevator and stair bulkhead. So the only issue, which I deferred to Commissioner Otley Brown about really, is whether the 734 square foot penthouse that duplexes to the floor below affected the findings that were to allow a conversion to M15, and this was in an area where M15 has a very high FAR, and this doesn't use anywhere near the FAR. There were also, I just want to add that there were also conditions in the 1980 variance, and there's been no discussion about whether the conditions have been satisfied. For example, the proposed plans don't show tenant recreational space, which was one of the conditions. If anything, the duplex penthouse now looks like it's completely in control of the rooftop, so what is the tenant recreational space? Normally, because that was at a time when the zoning resolution, the Article 1, Chapter 5 conversion, always required recreational space on the roof for those conversions. Mr. Ollie Brown, do you want to comment on the?
I don't think that the addition of that amount of square footage was significant in budging the finding meter because only half of the allowable FAR was actually ever built here, so a little bit more than half. It's still a very drastically underbuilt building that still suffered from the same kinds of uniqueness. And I think that we settled the idea on Bella Vista last hearing, so I don't think this disturbs that.
Okay. Anybody else?
So we're good with this application?
Well, no, they have to respond to the conditions of the 1980 approval. So we will have to reopen them
okay.
to
That's what I
respond
wanted.
to that.
Okay. 1980 conditions.
Computers like buildings. Okay.
Continued, I'm sorry, Ms.
Next, I just want to, and then just a reminder that the building next door was built residential in exchange for a special permit from city planning, which required restoration of the subject building by the Landmarks Commission. Landmarks required restoration, and that our decision would be conditioned on the completed restoration of the subject building prior to TCO, which is consistent with what Landmarks requires, but I wanted to belt and suspender it.
Continued hearing items, item number 3, 42929BZ, 4801 Kings Highway, Brooklyn.
Okay. They request an adjournment, but I just wanted to point out, in case there's anyone here for the applicant, that the fire department issued violations that need to be corrected, and they should be addressed before they appear at the next hearing, so they should be addressing those in advance of waiting for us to discuss it. And we have one new letter in support and one new letter of objection, citing noise and traffic concerns caused by, that would be caused by a convenience store, so the applicant should address for the next hearing those comments. Okay, so,
Did you find something attached to that letter and objection?
no, they were just the standard form letter, and
Right.
there was a little paragraph that said noise.
I found one that said C attached, but
Oh,
it was just a one-page
so
document.
maybe there was an attachment, because that's how I know what the objection
Yeah.
was, and the letter in support just checked the box.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Anybody else on this? No, okay.
Item number 4, 13887BZ, 21836 Hillside Avenue, Queens.
Okay, so this, they didn't get listed as adjourned, but the applicant's submission is basically stating that they're working on the site improvement, which is weather dependent, and want to return when the work has been completed, so it's reasonable to adjourn it. I don't think there's any reason to have a hearing.
Adjourn, okay. New cases, item number 5, 11553BZ, 25202 Union Turnpike, Queens.
Okay, we have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearings to officials. Community Board recommends approval. We have Fire Department letter of no objection. Nowhere in any of the materials is there the area of the zoning lot, which we need to have. It's also not in the resolution, so someone needs to provide it. There must be a survey. The most recently approved plans show a landscape area with trees along 80th Avenue, which were not provided and not shown on the proposed plans. Therefore, it's out of compliance. which is not mentioned at all either in the statement of facts or in the compliance certificate. I continue to wonder what that compliance certificate is for, signed and sealed like that. I did see a high green fence on the site, which seems to have been installed instead of the landscaping, but that's not quite the same thing as landscaping. So, yeah. Any other comments on this?
I just had one correction to bring to everybody's attention. It's regarding the sign, per plan, the non-illuminated signs exceed 58 square feet, as stated in the signage chart analysis. And it is within the permitted surface area, but the numbers don't correspond, so they just need to correct
And
it.
they should break it out by frontage.
They should
on
break
the
it, yeah.
analysis form.
Yeah.
Go.
1 second. Okay.
Also, I believe from the photographs, there was some, the site looks like it needs a little bit of cleaning up. There are tires improperly stored and some garbage on the site that should be tidied up.
I have to say, I went to the site a few weeks ago, and it was in the most immaculate state
Oh.
that
Right.
I've seen it in. I think the photos that they submitted was when it was being fixed up, and I was there just about 2 weeks ago. So everything is striped, the fences are in, they put in new fences with opaque greens.
Oh, it's quite, I'm glad
So
to hear
I
that.
actually think there's two sets of photos. There's the ones that show the fencing in and the site looks good, and there's another set where the site doesn't look good.
And it should,
Yeah.
it's the later one.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Item number 6, 2602BZ, 1680 Richmond Avenue, Staten Island.
Okay, there are no notice requirements for extensions of time to obtain a CO. We have fire department letter of no objection. Since the tenant vacated in July 2017, it seems that some work must have occurred on the site to bring it into compliance with the approval. So they need to provide information on that. I know they're blaming not having control of the site on why they haven't proceeded, but they've had control for 2 years, or almost.
It looks from the pictures like it's completed, and all they need is the C of O at this point and the sign off.
Okay. I didn't actually see that, okay. Okay, and then I'd like them to describe the differences, if any, between the approved plans and the proposed plans. They were just both submitted, and we don't know if there's anything, right? And then also, if it's not completed, then explain to us what the timeline for the completion of the work is, and what's the status also of the remediation, because there's a remediation field that's shown eventually to be removed and replaced with parking. And, yeah, and so it's kind of odd also that if the work is completed, it's not mentioned anywhere in the statement of facts. And so-
Right, it's only from looking at the pictures where it's like, this looks like this is done already.
And I believe if it's not completed, if the remediation is not completed, and that's why they are still keeping this, what is called temporary structure, they can provide us with a submission from their environmental engineer or environmental consultant explaining why it's not completed and what is the time frame for completion. So the conditions of the O2 variance are satisfied.
One? Item number 7, 18908BZ, 228 to 230 Mercer Street. This address will be changed.
Yeah, or something, right? We
I
have to
think it's
figure it out.
228, 230 Mercer.
So we have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials. Community board waives its right to recommend. They need to provide a certificate of occupancy, assuming there is one on the site. I do have to say, it's been difficult to find which building it is. When I go on Biz, I can't figure out which is the right building at any address. When you look at the building, it's clearly labeled as 230 Mercer. When you go online, go onto Biz, 230 and 232, and shares a Broadway address because it's a through block building.
Two buildings on the lot, yeah.
Yeah, so, and it says 2 buildings on the block, when you don't know which buildings, it's on the Biz entry, there are 2 buildings shown, but 2 bin numbers, so you don't really know what that means from the buildings department point of view. So clearing it up is necessary, and I know fire department has had a concern about that. Fire department requested that we adjourn that hearing to give them time to inspect. I think we can hear this and talk about clearing up the address and hear any other comments that people might have, but then we'll lay it over to give fire department time to do their inspections. There's also, they need to indicate whether there are any proposed changes to the PCE layout or hours of operation, and whether the banners have approval from the Landmarks Commission, because this is in a historic district. Anybody else on this? No?
No.
Item number 8, 15014BZ, 30 Broad Street, Manhattan.
We have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials. Community Board recommends approval. We have DOI, which is needed because there's a change in operator in this case, even though it's a change in operator, right? The fire department, again, requests an adjournment to give them time to inspect. And again, I think we can hear this and just hear if there are any other issues, and then lay it over.
Good, thank you.
For after fire department inspection. I didn't have any other comments.
I just had one question, and that is regarding signage. I want to confirm if any signage is being proposed along Exchange Place and New Street. I think the previous plan showed some signage along those frontages, but the revised plans do not. So I just want to...
And New
Got it.
Street? And-
Yes, New Street and Exchange Place.
There was a street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Its main frontage is Broad Street, but it's a...
Okay.
And it's generally the signage would be on this, I think, on the second floor or something like that.
Yes. Okay.
Move on? Appeals calendar, continued hearing items. Item number 9, 2017 5A through 2017 7A. This is Sharretts Road, Staten Island. They're asking for an adjournment.
Right, to work out DEP issues ongoing.
Item number 10, 2017 59A, 3857 Ocean View Avenue, Brooklyn. They didn't ask for an adjournment on this, but they're still doing DEP stuff, so
Okay.
I told them we probably would adjourn it, or...
No, but so I want them to we've been at this for a while, and I would like them to update us on the proposed uses in the building, because it could have changed. So the initial problem was that it was proposed as a daycare center, and then they said it was going to be some kind of community center, Russian something
Yeah.
or other community center. It's been a long time, so I don't know whether that's still the use, and I want to make sure we're up to date on
Okay.
that. The only submission was a plan set that showed the flood zone compliance, and we had asked that fire department look at the project, and I don't find a fire department review. Since the building isn't proposed to be sprinklered, so far as I could find, looking at the drawings, and the drawings show a community facility use at the first floor, which is below the design flood elevation, and residential above. So you have a mixed-use situation, and the lower floor, I think, is to be used for a number of people coming to events. So that seems to me something where, at the very least, the ground floor should be sprinklered, but I don't know. And then there's still open DEP issues. Anybody else? No?
Zoning calendar, continued hearing items. Item number 11, 2016 1208BZ, 300 East 64th Street, Manhattan.
Okay. There are noise and vibration disturbance issues at this location. The owner has engaged a noise consultant to conduct weight drop tests, dropping weights from 6-inch heights, which, given our experience with weight drops, seems quite low for a test. So even for somebody really big, they're gonna bend down to 6 inches above to drop? I don't think so. So anyway, so the drops were 6 inches on raw flooring and then on pads, and the consultant recommended installation of 2 3/4 inch thick padding on the floors. This has been ordered and will be installed next week. Then the space will be retested. The sound system levels were also lowered, and I would want to direct them to place limiters on the sound system, so it's not something that the staff can adjust. So I think because they're kind of proceeding the way they should be, we don't necessarily need a hearing, but if there are people who come as a result of being notified, then we should hold a hearing.
Well,
So we can ask whether anybody's here to testify on it.
I do want to add that the time that the tests were done in the apartments was at 12:45, and if from earlier notes from one of the tenants stated that when she first bought the apartment, she was showed at 12:45 till 1:30, and that was the time that they didn't have classes, or I guess it was a light class. So when they do the retesting, I'd like it to be at a time, either in the morning when we hear the most complaints about it, which was, I think.
That's what they said in their papers, that they will be doing the testing in the morning when the ambient sounds are lower.
We are requiring the applicant to be present tomorrow.
Because if there's any neighbors who come, they should be present to hear the testimony and
I'll
respond.
double check this, but I believe I think this is the one with the doctors.
Yeah.
I think she's coming again. She had sent an email. I think she's coming. I think she mentioned to me she's coming.
Okay, so then if the neighbors are going to testify, then we hold a hearing, right? And obviously the applicant has to be here for that.
And maybe we can ask for a clarification why they did do a drop test at 6-inch height. Is that are there programs, classes that only allow that? Why didn't they consider a much more conservative testing analysis?
Okay, so in that case, then we're asking the testing, I think it's called Centurion who did the
Right.
testing, or Criterion who did the testing.
Cerami, sorry,
Cerami, sorry.
Cerami.
So that means a rep from Cerami needs to come because the applicant's attorney can't answer that question.
Well, let me ask you, is that a reasonable question to be asked? Because we need to understand what's the baseline criteria that we should be applying for all of these PCEs, and especially when there are certain kind of classes that are being offered where you do use weight drops. Now, I understand not every program is similar.
Right, I think it's dependent on the program.
Right, so we need to understand the program and then recognize that this was a reasonable test measure that was taken. I'm not saying that we should establish a standard, but what would be the conservative standard for this program?
Right. Okay. I'm just curious because you have people of all different sizes, and depending on the kind of program, not everyone is able to bend their knees to 6 inches above the ground, right? So it's not a yoga class, it's a weightlifting class, so there's different agility levels, right? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to note that we received the email from the Dr. Dua,
Who is?
From the tenant.
Tenant.
of the building, and she said, she had said, "My name is Dr. Dua, you had sent me a copy of the court hearing notice." She had actually CC'd Muriel. As our board management, Ackerman, did not put the notice 40 days ahead of the hearing in our lobby. I had waited until this week to submit a testimony, hoping that the behavior of the gymnasium would change and we would not have to testify against their establishment. However, until now, the complaints that were initially presented during the first hearing remain the same. I won't be able to notarize the application on time and send it to you as I'm out of town for a conference that I organized and returned Monday night. Please let me know how to proceed. Can I email you my letter of testimony and drop a letter personally Tuesday morning. I did cancel my patients for Tuesday afternoon, as I would like to be present in the court myself.
Okay,
So
so
I told her to
obviously she
email
can
it, so-
email it, right.
Yeah, I don't know if you
Yeah,
emailed.
and she doesn't need to notarize it, she can
Yeah.
email it.
No, I told her to just email it to submit and email it.
Right, right,
I didn't see
okay.
it. That came on February 7th.
So I'm not surprised that the complaints are the same because we've got, still, it's a raw floor with no padding on it, which won't be installed until next week when it's supposed to arrive, right? So though maybe there's still audible music, I don't know if there's audible music. So the testing consultant said there was no audible music at the time of the testing, but that doesn't mean at 6 AM there isn't audible music. So, okay.
Excuse me. Item number 12, 2016-4240BZ, 1231 3rd Avenue, Manhattan.
Okay, this is a legalization. It opened in January of 2017. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. I'm sorry, I'm continued, I'm sorry. According to the applicant, tenants have been notified of this hearing by a posting in the lobby. There's a photo from which you cannot tell at all where the little sign was posted. So it's not descriptive of being in a lobby, it's descriptive of being on a wall. I find that quite curious that someone would take such a photo. I note also that they posted the form that the BSA mails to the applicant to notify neighbors of an oncoming hearing by mail, right? And so what that form shows is there will be a hearing, you're invited to attend, and if you have comments, please fill out the attached form and send it to submit. So they posted that thing. Of course, there's no attached form, so does that discourage people from sending any comments to submit? So, and I did make a comment about that at the last hearing, and the applicant insisted that this was the right form to post. And now that I looked at what was actually posted, it's clearly not the right form to post. The most recent submission admits that there have been ongoing noise issues that the gym has been addressing since it opened in February 2017.
January.
I'm sorry, no, they said okay.
Oh.
We were told that January in the statement of facts, and in the cover letter it says February. So I don't know what the right answer is, I'm just repeating what it says on the cover letter
Got it.
recently submitted. I think that the reason for admitting that there have been noise issues is now they're concerned that tenants are going to come and testify. So I wish they would have just admitted that up front, because that's what you're supposed to do. Anyway,
You have the
anybody
fire
else?
department letter, you saw that?
We had a fire department letter from before.
No, this one's February 9th.
Oh, then.
There was actually, at the last hearing, or review session, there was a fire department letter about the
This is a
sprinkler
new
and
one?
fire alarms, but
There was a
there's been
new one
subsequent-
submitted.
Yeah.
There was a new one recently submitted, which I think is a no objection letter, but there's going to be violations issued.
There were violations issued for failure to obtain an operating permit from the DOB, and to date, no PA application has been filed with the DOB for the cellar and the first floors. The Bureau's LLP unit has been informed and will enforce this violation order. The premises is protected by a sprinkler system which was inspected and found to be operational. A hydrostatic pressure test system is scheduled for June of 2019. The premises and PCE space currently have a fire alarm system that was inspected by the Bureau's Fire Alarm Inspection Unit and tested satisfactory. They have no, fire department has no objections to the board rendering a decision on this application, and we will continue to inspect this premises and enforce any outstanding violation
So
orders.
the main issue is the PA permit, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which they can't get until.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, okay.
From the revised submission that was submitted, it seems they have scaled down the kind of classes that are being offered, and like UGI balls are not being used, heavy weights are not being used in classes during early morning and early evening. So I just want to make sure that going forward and what is being practiced today will be sans these things, and that should be part of our condition. also.
Right. No, but so, what that points to is no acoustical separation. You can't have a condition that you're not going to use these balls because there's no way for us to enforce, right? What that tells you is you should have put down padding, you should have hung ceilings, you should have done the following things, and now they have to do them. So, because otherwise, they need to turn this thing into a yoga studio. And even yoga studios, you fling your legs up on the wall, you make noise, things like that, so. Right. And we actually have a yoga studio that has significant, right in this hearing, significant acoustical separation. So and that's probably done from experience, so.
Item number 13, 2017-131BZ, 7785 Gerry Street, Brooklyn.
Okay. We have now a total, they revised the drawings, and the total community facility and rear yard obstruction height now has been reduced to 30 feet from 37'8". Floor-to-floor heights were reduced at the first and second floors, so the building base height was reduced from 67'8" to 61'10", with a 5-foot setback at the fourth floor, and a total height was reduced from 77'8" to 71'10", with a 5-foot and to 17-foot setback varying. The setbacks rely, as we've discussed at prior hearings, on the dormer rule compliance, with which must be verified by DOB, because we don't necessarily agree that that's the right way to have calculated that. An elevator was added as directed by the board, which was supposed to be just exclusively for the synagogue use, but the residential elevator still stops on the synagogue and mikvah floors, and it should not do that. It needs to be isolated for the residents, so it can't have a door opening into those floors.
I was looking into that, and I think on the cellar, it might be okay because the elevator does provide access for the residents to the laundry area and then to the sprinkler and the meter rooms. So the cellar would be okay, based on my review. And the first floor would also be okay because there is a wall separating it. My concern is, and I agree with you, the concern is with the second floor and the third floor. The second floor residential elevator opens onto the lobby, which accesses the rabbi's office, and same thing with the third floor also. It directly opens into the women's sanctuary. There's no separation. There's no reason for the elevators on the second and the third floor to open to the sanctuary. That can be blocked off. That was one of my comments.
No, that's correct. And on the cellar level, there should be clearly doors that are locked and separating the laundry room area from the mikvah area.
And one of my comments was that they should place a sign saying emergency exit only in the cellar level door from the washroom area.
Oh, okay.
Is the laundry room used by the mikvah in any way? Because I would assume they have towels and
Yes,
things
it
like
may
that.
be the
That's a good
mikvah's
question.
locker rooms.
Oh,
Yeah, that's true. When I
That I
first
didn't
saw that,
realize.
I assumed it was for the mikvah,
Yeah,
not for the
me too.
tenants.
I thought it was for the tenant. Well, then we need a
Then-
clarification.
And how can you have the tenants and the mikvah people using the
No.
same? That's
Right.
ridiculous.
Right.
Is there
Okay.
a laundry room indicated in the rabbi's apartment? Or
Well, there is no rabbi's. Is
sorry.
there?
in the residential, sorry. In the
I'm just,
residential portion?
no, each of the rooms do have a laundry room.
They have a laundry, so take it back, okay.
Then I take back my comment, and
Okay.
then the cellar floor, you do need a door between the corridor that.
Well, nobody needs access to the only people who
But
need
it's
access
an
to the
emergency
cell.
staircase, right? It would.
That's an emergency stair, but you don't need the elevator open on that floor. Oh, you're just talking about the door for egress?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But what about for the maintenance purposes of
They
the
can
sprinkler
meet-
spaces,
But
meter
they can
rooms?
get to the meter room both by the staircase and by the other elevator. That's just for service, right? So,
Okay.
and normally the meter checker guys take the stairs down to the basement. That's what goes to
Okay.
the meter room, right?
Okay, good.
No, I'm just writing. Okay.
Item number 14, 2017-244BZ, 2208
Oh,
Bowler.
hold on, hold on. I still have comments on the,
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
and I
we're back
also-
to
yeah.
Gerry Street.
Yeah.
Item number
Yeah, yeah.
13, 2017-131BZ, 7785 Gerry Street, Brooklyn, sorry.
Yeah, I also had one more comment about the utilization.
Oh, sorry.
So there was a revised space utilization study that was provided that now represents that at 8:30 a.m. weekdays, there will be 435 people in the building. So I also am confused about how they're representing simultaneous occupancy. So it seems like we're talking about a lot of people in this building at one time. They told us on the cover page that the study is a snapshot in time, so that seems to be the snapshot. We also still have open WRP issues. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I was appreciative of the applicant submitting the BSA application 32509BZ, trying to show the similarities between the programmatic needs and the projected congregation, and how that was analyzed with regards to the dedicated mikvah space and the placement of the mikvah place in relation to the prayer space and synagogue. So I accept that argument, but my question is, is there a typical ratio of congregation to mikvah? And what was that for the 32509? Because the congregation size for that project is also, I think, no, actually, on that one, the projected congregation was over 1,000. So I would like to know how many mikvahs were proposed for their congregants as opposed to what's being proposed here. And maybe that can help them firm up their argument for why they need the such a large mikvah space.
Right, one of the arguments, though, that they made at one of the prior hearings, I believe, I think it was this one, because we have two mikvah cases, is that people who are not congregants come to mikvahs also, and that they can't turn them away.
Okay.
So I don't, I don't really understand that. We're trying to, these are supposed to be accessory uses to the subject use.
As I was reviewing it, this is just to kind of help them make their argument stronger, but as I was reviewing the site plan, even if, let's say, the mikvah space gets reduced slightly, it may allow for one of the office spaces to be located down there. It really still does not reduce the waiver that is being asked, which is what's driving which is driven by the number of prayer rooms, and they have made the argument through this case also, the location of the prayer rooms to the synagogue. So I'm wondering if that will help their argument. That's really why I'm making that statement.
Anybody else?
I appreciate their understanding our push behind the relocation of the prayer rooms, and that while programmatically they feel those prayer rooms need to be on the first floor, they did at least understand what we were hinting at in terms of reducing the bulk in the rear, and they responded by at least reducing it. So it's like a compromise, and so I appreciate that.
Anything else?
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Anybody else on this? No?
Item number 14, 2017-244BZ, 2208 Bowler Avenue, the Bronx.
They have the revised DOB objection sheet to reflect the lot coverage, I think was the issue. We asked for an updated survey in NAVD 88. The provided survey is dated October 15th, 2018, so it actually predates our comments, our request for that, and has conflicting notes that were added, maybe not by the surveyor, which is quite disturbing because the surveyor is really protective of that seal. So the conflicting notes say effectively, on one hand, that the dimensions are in NAVD 88, and then there's another note that says, to find out NAVD 8, use the following formula. So you can't do both. So I actually don't know what the datum is on that survey. It directs, so This is in zone AE 14 feet, and so it's critical to know where the first floor is located relative to that. I'd say less for the board to know that than for the architect, because the architect appears to be basing it on the information on the survey, and if the survey is not in the right datum, I actually worked on a project where the building was built, and the survey was in the wrong datum, and it had to be corrected after the fact. That's not funny. So the architect really needs to insist that the surveyor, not for us, for themselves, that the surveyor convert the survey to NAVD 88. It's more work, but that's what they get paid for, right? And what I didn't know is whether the architect actually did the conversions, him or herself, according to the instructions that used to be clearer on the survey, but now are conflicting. So I actually wouldn't know what to do if I were the architect looking at that survey. We do have floor area calculations now, which we didn't have before. So the requested total is 18,707.5 square feet. They need to clarify whether the requested height waiver is to 38 foot 4 inches from top of curb to roof, or 47 foot 6 inches to top of bulkheads, which include a boiler room and a mechanical room. That measurement, to the 47 foot 6, is to the top of the stair and elevator bulkheads, which are permitted obstructions, and mechanical enclosures may also be permitted obstructions if they qualify in terms of the dimensions, in which case they don't need a waiver they don't need us to grant a waiver to 47.6. So the architect needs to look at whether those are permitted obstructions. It appears that there's an acoustic fence wall that was added to one side and maybe two sides, but I don't think so, of the rooftop playground, but it isn't clear in the drawings. It's clear in the rendering, but not the roof plan. So they need to clarify the extent of that acoustical fence and provide more information on its height and its material. There was an EAS that was updated on January 24th with a noise study that also considers the playground impacts, which we asked them to do. And so they have to indicate on the plans also that the window wall attenuation will be 36 dBA to achieve 45 dBA interior noise levels. That's a result of the noise study. Waiting for this, okay, so maybe they want to wait for the sign-off, okay. We were also supposed to have a note on the drawing that there is no lighting or amplification on the roof other than for emergency lighting. They submitted revised responses to DEP's comment letter on January 24th, so we need a review on that, which we expected mid-March. And I didn't see anything in the traffic study about the 5-foot wide sidewalk condition. We had asked about that in terms of pedestrian circulation, but I believe we stated at that hearing that we would direct the applicant in the resolution to review a bulb out with the Department of Transportation, but not make it a requirement because we can't predict how DOT will respond. And, you know, in part, I think the bulb out might be a problem because Bowler is a bus route, and so maybe the bulb out would be a problem for the
I seem
pass.
to recall during our discussions when we were talking about the sidewalk narrowing to 5 foot at that intersection, the architect had said that they were going to look at options of shading the building a little bit to widen that, and there was a possibility of that.
Yeah.
That was not discussed in the letter, or if that was explored and therefore eliminated, or it was just not feasible. But it would be helpful to know if they
Right.
went through that exercise.
Because I know the hearing went back and forth where
Right.
I was concerned about reducing their program
Right.
in a way that was negative for them.
Right.
That if it was consistent with their program, fine, do it. And if it wasn't, then maybe the bulb out solution would be okay
Right.
with DOT. I was concerned about forcing the sidewalk onto their project, which has been revised so many times
Right.
with 3 architects.
We did
Yeah.
send that, as per your we did send the plans to the DOT. We sent it again last week. We haven't heard anything. We reached out to them. We haven't heard anything back about the narrowness of that sidewalk.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard anything back since January, so.
Well,
Say it
and
again.
in part because there was a transportation study, and had that included a pedestrian analysis, maybe DOT would have been more sort of alerted or heightened to that, because they look at transportation studies, different department. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Regarding the survey, I'm looking at the survey right now, and I'm confused, although I did work with surveys like all the time. But note number one, it's kind of confusing. Like you said, Chair, it says that elevations and legal grades are referred to in AVD. And then it says legal grades are referred to the curb level. So it's kind of double reference here.
Right.
Yeah.
So this need to be fixed. The other thing, and this is a recommendation, every surveyor wanna give the relation between different datums, so he makes his survey like more flexible. Somebody wanna give the elevation in NAVD and GVD, he can switch between datums easily. So instead of giving this in a note, like note number 2, if you wanna get X, add 2.45 to what? Don't do it that way. Just box an equation, say NAVD equal NGVD plus 2.6 something. Make it an equation, so all what the user of this survey needs to do is just plug in this equation.
Right.
There is no room for confusion here. So
Right.
this is much easier way to be done, to
Right.
relate an atom to the other. The
Right.
other thing is I looked at the elevations by the architect, and I saw in some of the elevations, I have seen 2 different elevations, and it's not clear for me which one is which. So when somebody provides, I used to prepare drawings for MTA, and MTA, they ask for every single elevation to be referenced to their local datum. They have a special datum, which is about 100 feet above the NAVD. If you're given 2 data, at least make one of them like in a color, the other one is different color, or make it, put in a certain format and the other one in another format, and provide a legend describing which one is which. But the way it's given on the elevations, it's not clear which one is which. So
Right.
they need to fix this.
Yeah. And this is really to protect them, because bad things could happen if the contractor doesn't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Item number 15, 2017-258BZ, 6161 Broadway, Bronx.
Okay, the revised drawings I thought were very good, just a few corrections needed. This site is in a C2-2 overlay in which use group 8 public parking lots are permitted subject to access, screening, and surfacing requirements of section 3653, 55, and 56. The screening provision in particular is relevant here because we have that public parking area. Access to the lot is through the subject gas station, so a portion of the gas station is actually accessory to the public parking area. I'm not sure if that does anything for us here, but I wanted to alert at least council to that you drive through the subject of this special permit in order to get to a public parking lot. I don't see a fence separating the gas station from the public parking area. How is that area controlled? There's also on the drawing a diagonal line that subdivides the lot and runs through an existing storage area. So I don't know what the significance of that line is, and the fact that it bisects the structure, what's it doing? The site plan was revised to show planting. Since the public parking lot is adjacent to a residence district, the planting beds must be 4 feet wide. That's where the compliance with section 3653 to 56 comes in. So it must be 4 feet wide to enable the 6-foot high arbor vitae to actually grow and survive. It's currently shown at 3 feet, and the zoning resolution requires 4 feet. They need to provide planting bed details, including curbs, and to show on the site plan where the bollards that are detailed on Z009 are located. I didn't find them on the drawings, so. Photos of the existing 4-foot wall show it is broken and cracked in some places. Those areas need to be rebuilt. All of the fencing on top of it has to be replaced as shown on the drawing with details Z009. And be sure the plans are clear about the fact that the fencing is to be replaced and the wall to be repaired. And a revised traffic study was submitted on January 4th. DOT has not yet responded, but they did include crash data, which is what we asked them to do. Anybody else? No?
Move on. Item number 16, 2017-291BZ, 1367 East 26th Street, Brooklyn.
And I think we hear it at the same time as the adjacent.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. 2017, item number 17, 2017-292BZ, 1363 East 26th Street, Brooklyn.
Okay. The drawings were revised to respond to the threshold issue of 50% existing exterior wall retention at the exterior and 50% minimum existing joist retention. On the first floor plan, they do need to provide the dimensions for all the rear and side yards, because there's a stepping, so it's not showing what the stepping is. The rear yard waiver is minimal, with the rear yard held at 27 foot 3 inches. There is a small discrepancy in dimensions on the cellar plan that shows 27 foot 4 inches, so they should all be the same. The first floor plan doesn't show the small terrace that's projecting at the rear from the den, which is shown in the section, because actually the first floor is higher than grade, so it creates this little terrace. They should add a note to all the floor plans that removal of existing walls and joists in excess of those shown on the approved plans will void the special permit. And I note the FAR was reduced to 1, which is what we directed them to do at the last hearing. Anything else?
Good. Item number 18, 2017-298BZ, 14 White Street, Manhattan. This is being adjourned.
Yes, I just want to note for the applicant, reminder that in addition to needing to make the basic 7221 findings, there are open environmental issues that need to be addressed.
Item number 19, 2017-309BZ, 406 Renison Avenue, Brooklyn.
Okay. So a letter from one of the tenants was provided clarifying that no body work or painting is done. It doesn't mention that we heard at the last hearing that that same tenant performs arc welding for muffler repair. The owner, who is no longer represented by counsel and probably needs to be, given the serious issues associated with the site, submitted existing conditions plans that don't respond to our concerns. Nothing else was submitted. But because this is effectively a compliance hearing, the incomplete submission, I don't think should result in an administrative adjournment. We need the owner to attend. So the owner must appear and must bring his engineer who prepared the drawings. And the main reason for that is because the engineer is the only person who's actually going to understand the direction that we give, since there's no attorney representing them. And the owner seems to not understand even that they have to respond to us. I know our project manager reached out and said, you can't not answer us. You'll lose your right to use this place.
Right. Did you see the more?
And the fire
compliance.
department issued a letter of objection, and the fire department requested that a DEC rep attend the hearing if possible. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if fire department reached out to the DEC rep. They haven't responded. So I suppose I could read this, but unless the owner is, I don't think the owner is here. So I don't know that the owner's going to watch the video. So I think it's just better for fire department to tell the owner what the issues are. And anyway, violations were issued, so the owner should have the violations.
There was a compliance board.
They, the owner's notes to review the session today, to review it, so if you would like.
Oh, okay. Okay, he knows to listen. Okay, so I'll read the fire department letter, which says, the fire department has reviewed the plans that were submitted on January 24th, 2019, and have the following objections. Plans do not show removal of the office partition as cited in DOB ECB violation number, I'll just read the last digits, 850K and 523J. Plans do not show fire stopping of ceiling throughout the premises as cited in DOB ECB violation number 524L. Plans do not show replacement of the prohibited door hardware as cited in DOB ECB violation 851M. As described in the certificate of occupancy number 628, the construction classification is non-fireproof. Based on this, a sprinkler system at a minimum shall be installed. As per various fire code sections, repair garages with hot works operations shall be conducted within fire-rated enclosures and the area protected by a sprinkler system as per the fire code. The plans submitted do not show any sprinkler systems at these premises. In addition, all individuals using flammable and combustible gases must be certificate of fitness holders and permits obtained from the fire department for storage and use of such gases. Based on the foregoing, the fire department recommends that at a minimum, a sprinkler system be installed at these premises and that the open ceiling be protected by a 1-hour rated ceiling construction. Okay. And you said there was something else?
Excuse me.
Compliance photos that have been uploaded for our viewing.
Oh.
Which show, they show situations that are contrary to what the applicant represented to us. Most obviously, parking on the sidewalk, rear yard with construction debris in it, as well as debris strewn throughout the site.
Those are recent compliance?
As from the site visits from...
Ted Ricketts, our
site.
compliance officer, went out.
Oh, I wasn't able to open them. Okay, I got it. Okay. So that's compliance photos by the BSA compliance officer,
Yes.
right? Compliance officer. Wow, so what'd they do between the photographs that we saw at the last hearing where that area was all cleared out?
There's still some,
It looks like fencing, like
Fence.
maybe PVC fencing materials are stacked up, and then it shows a broken fence, like a broken wood picket fence in the back, and so I don't know if they're in the process of restoring that fence or what, but.
I believe the owner was on site when they took the pictures because they asked for copies of the pictures.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Ted
Yeah, I
said-
mean, maybe they can walk us through what was happening if this is as a result of the work that is going on. We need that clarification.
Right, and then there's signage the signage that was below the original signage seems like, I don't know if it's being taken down or if it's just being replaced with newer versions of it. It's hard to tell, but you see that, like a progress scene of signage half on and half off, and
Okay.
But there's no reason to have a car on the sidewalk.
absolutely no reason. So I guess they
Especially-
should be prepared to address all of those photos.
Especially while we're in the middle of hearings and we've been giving all of these instructions, it makes me very concerned as to what's going to happen the day after we rule on this, if this is to continue.
Well, we have a compliance officer, so
Speak
I'm
up, speak up.
we have a compliance officer, so we definitely will, I hope we will be able to ensure that there's a regular visit.
So yes and no, right? The compliance officer obviously has thousands of sites,
True.
right? So it's not like every week they can drive by. So either we see that the owner is going to actually enforce compliance and take responsibility, or the owner doesn't have a right to this continued variance, right? Can't be relying on, we're not even an enforcement agency, right? And so we're not the police department, we're not the buildings department, and so we can't rely on one person who works all the projects at the BSA to keep checking on this one site.
Chair,
Yeah.
the picture you see with the car on the sidewalk, Ted said when he went, it was a customer's car on the sidewalk, and when they was told to move, they just they were supposed to get their service done, but they just left because they didn't want to move their car.
So that's called towed at owner expense. That's what has to happen. So when the customer behaves that way and you tell the customer to remove the car and they walk away, no car when you get back.
Just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, no, thank you, but that's part of it, and maybe that's part of what the owner doesn't understand, is your customer needs to obey the law, and it's your job to make efforts to have the law enforced with the towing company.
There's a certain way that they're doing business that needs to change, and it needs to change quickly. I was hoping that it had by now.
We move on? Let me know when you're ready. Okay. Item number 20, 2017-313BZ, 853 Kent Avenue, Brooklyn.
The uniqueness study was updated to include some vacant lots that had been missing from the prior study. Two of these received variances to allow residential use, one at 1.9 FAR and the other at 2.39 FAR. So it gives you an idea of where the board was on those two. The study concludes that there are a total of 6 similarly situated lots in the 1,000-foot study area, including the subject, out of a total of 530 lots and 25 vacant lots measuring under 26 feet wide. The zoning study indicates that the requested 2.4 FAR exceeds that of an R6B district, which is 2 FAR, but is in line with an R6A, which is 3, and a R7A district. As a mid-block site, the zoning favors either R6A or R6B, which are equidistant from the site, so you could kind of go either way in terms of which is most compatible. I just am reaching towards Commissioner Otley Brown, whether the financials support the greater FAR between the 2 and the 2.4 that's requested. And drawing 10 still shows a 5-foot railing at the front, even though the 5-foot railing has been changed on the other drawing, so that needs to be corrected. And there's, the only open environmental issue is noise, and DEP's promised its review in March.
So I reviewed the financials, and as of now, I don't feel like the E-finding has been met yet, and that's because there are still 2 issues that I feel are still a question. The first one has to do with the FF&E add-on to the construction costs that they had originally added on, saying that it's for high-quality appliances and finishes for a condo versus a rental. And I believe that was like $160,000. They have revised that number down to $50,000 per apartment for a total of $100,000. And they say that that accounts for the differential between low-level appliances in terms of quality and high-level appliances. So they give us an example, a refrigerator. A low-end refrigerator could be like $600 and a high-end refrigerator could be like $2,500. So if you take that into account and you follow their logic along, the FF&E should only account for the differential, not for the total cost. The total cost is actually already included in other construction categories like specialties, plumbing, and mechanicals that are already in the cost estimation. So if you look at the apartment and let's say you add $2,500 in differential money or $2,000 in differential money for the oven, for the refrigerator, the washer, dryer, the dishwasher, and maybe 3 bathtubs, you still don't come up to $50,000 per apartment. So I think that's way too much, and I don't want to encourage the financial analysts to start beefing up construction costs in this way, because this is a new add-on that we don't see that often. So it should be capped at $20,000 per apartment or not included at all. but it certainly is not going to stay in at 50,000 each. So that's a cost savings on the construction side. And as for, I had a previous comment about the comparables that were used to support the residential apartment sales assumptions, and that comment still stays the same. I don't think that those apartments that are used as comparables are actually very comparable to the subject apartments, which are huge duplexes with added floor area or added space on other floors. So for instance, the ground floor apartment is a 2-bedroom, is a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom duplex that also has cellar recreation space. And then the upper apartment is also a duplex that has access to a roof terrace. That's pretty spectacular in terms of apartment size and layout. And what they're using here is they're using simplex comparables that are 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom. And then they're saying, well, these are comparable apartments are smaller, so we're going to adjust downward for economy of size. But you can only do that when you're already comparing apples to apples. And this is not apples to apples. Those apartments are very much inferior to the subject apartments. So then you can't, there's no justification whatsoever for any negative adjustments. If you're going to stay with that, which you should not, but if you were, you would then make a positive adjustment to all of those because the subject apartments are clearly superior in every way. So they need to work on both of those portions of the report for us to see whether or not their project as presented to us meets the E finding, or they could reduce the size of the project.
And we have a guide that the two OFAR.
Right, and it might be more appropriate in this case.
I mean, I don't know how relevant my comments would be if they're going to scale down the project, but they need to be careful when they are providing the drawings. The plan sheet, similar to what you were commenting on the balconies, I noticed a lot of discrepancies in the plans. For example, the plan sheet 7 does not correspond with plan sheet 10 regarding the railing height. The plan and the elevations both should indicate 3-foot 6-inch railing height for balconies on the 3rd and the 4th floor. And the rear elevation on the plan sheet 11 does not match with the plans and sections, especially regarding the balcony locations and size. And those are critical because those are something that's being factored into our financials also.
So the instruction really has to be that the architect scour the plans and make sure that every dimension and notation and setback matches from, sounds ridiculous to have to instruct like this, but matches between the plan and the elevations and the sections, because we notice, so it's easy enough to notice, especially if you're the one who did the drawings. So, okay.
Item number 21, 2018-51BZ, 1101 Plainview Avenue, Queens.
Okay. We have a new letter of objection from an immediate neighbor who did not attend the prior hearing. The neighbor makes several complaints. One, that there should be a financial analysis for the project, that the building is too close to his property line, and that it's too tall for the neighborhood. The letter states that other letters of objection are attached to his letter, but I didn't find any attachment, and we couldn't find it when we checked with submit. I also see a December 27th letter of objection that I didn't mention at the last hearing and may not have seen. It might have come in a little late. It had similar concerns about the scale of the building. There was a November submission with, just to remind, because those are opposition letters that I hadn't mentioned previously. We did get a submission in November of 57 signed form letters in support. They're all the same letter signed by 57 people. So obviously there was an organized effort to get that support. I just want to clarify for that neighbor's letter, this is an application to vary building bulk requirements for a one-family home, not a two-family. So under the BSA sort of rules and operating procedure, financial analysis is not required when it's a one-family home. And the applicant the opposition letter mentioned that it was not a bulk waiver. It in fact is a bulk waiver for height and side yards and yards. The uniqueness study that was provided is a bit confusing as it doesn't identify all of the vacant lots in the study area and distinguish them from the subject. However, it's obvious that the subject lot is small and more limited in its development potential by the fact of it being a corner lot, and that only a tiny structure can be built on the site absent a variance. It'd be basically a tool shed that's being built. At the last hearing, we asked that in consideration of neighborhood character, the house be pulled back from the front lot line to increase the front yard depth at Beach 11th to 4 foot 4 inches. And I'm saying some of this for the benefit of that neighbor who arguably might listen to this hearing, to this review session, and attend the hearing tomorrow. I don't know.
I was
The
just
neighbor is
handed,
here.
I mean, a little, but I was handed a bunch of,
Okay.
from the neighbor and some objection
Okay,
letters.
so then we'll get the other objection
We'll have
letters.
them
So
scanned
for
out.
the benefit of the neighbor to understand what's before us. So at the last hearing, we asked that in consideration of neighborhood character, and we're looking at the total look at the neighborhood, we were concerned about the front yard depth on Beach 11th. So we asked that the house be pulled back to allow 4 foot 4 inches, which ended up reducing the one side yard to 4 feet from 5 feet, which was originally proposed. What that does, it retains a distance between the adjacent house between the adjacent house and the proposed house of 19 foot 5 inches. The other side yard remains at the proposed 8 foot depth, and the proposed house would be 20 feet 4 inches from the existing adjacent house. So there's a lot of separation. The zoning resolution tends to want to see 10-foot distances, 13-foot distances between the adjacent houses. So this is much more than that, actually. The site is in an AE10 flood zone, so the first floor must be lifted to clear the base flood elevation, which is 10. The 2017 survey indicates grade is at approximately 7.2 feet in NAVD 88. So a lift of 4 feet to clear what's known as freeboard is required, and from which the maximum building height is measured. So you lift it up 4 feet and then you measure the height. In this case, to clear also the 7 feet required by the building code for a parking garage, the parking space underneath, the first floor must be 7 feet clear, so it must be lifted 7 feet above grade to create a 7-foot floor to ceiling height. So that means that the first floors so you have to lift it up 7 feet above grade in order to get parking underneath legally, right? But the first and second floors of this house are only 8 feet, so they can't be smaller than that. And the proposed height above the base flood elevation is 35 feet. Drawing A201 shows the effect of complying with the sky exposure plane on the head height in the attic level bedrooms. So in terms of trying to get the height of the building down a little bit, I asked if the slope of the roof were modified so that the ridge height be brought down somewhat. The materials aren't clear about the height of the proposed building versus the height of the neighbors. It shows that there's a very nice little perspective rendering, but it doesn't actually show you heights. And there is this photo streetscape that shows that the adjacent properties are 37 feet high, but I suspect that this 37 feet high in those, in the databases is measured from grade and not from base flood elevation, because there isn't any way for them to know what base flood is. So that means this building is higher than those by a certain amount, like say 5 feet. It's not really clear what that is. So that's why it may be playing with the height of the attic peak. And then the other thing is the side that's adjacent to the long side lot line has a straight vertical wall instead of a slope with dormers, like it does on the street line. Maybe there could be better dormer use on that side instead of having that straight line rise, in deference to the neighbors. Other comments?
I think this site is so, it's such a narrow site, and in order for this to be a reasonable house for a family, which we typically see 4 bedrooms, they're trying to accommodate the 2 remaining bedrooms in the cellar,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, not in
in
the
the
cellar,
attic.
in the attic, not in the cellar, attic. And they have, they're trying to provide the minimum amount of headroom that would be needed for a reasonable occupiable bedroom space. So I'm very sympathetic to the height that is coming up as a result of it. But looking at the site plan and its relationship to the neighboring buildings, so for example, the building that is adjacent to the subject site on Plainview, the space between the 2 buildings is 15 foot 5 inches plus another 4 foot, which is much more than 19, which is much more than what we typically see in a typical 40 by 100 lot, where the space is at most, and the requirement is 8 feet. So I think this is quite a bit of a separation. So I respectfully, I disagree with you with regards to having to shape it back, because I don't think they have much room to play with in the attic for that reason. Similarly, in the rear side yard, the gap, as you mentioned, is much more than what typically you're required to 20-foot setback. So if you count the setback of the subject's abutting properties, side lot and their rear lot, it adds up. It is more than 20 feet. though.
Well, but then that would be 20 to 8, right?
Right,
So normally it would
20
be
to
a
8,
28-foot distance, and
But
here
it's
it's 20
24.
total.
Is
No,
it 20
20 foot
total?
4
It's 20
inches.
total, okay.
So I do have to say that we didn't have any objections to this project at the last hearing. So I agreed that I thought that the design of the house was reasonable, and though we didn't have information on height comparisons, it seemed reasonable given the tiny size of this lot. It's in response to new concerns from immediate neighbors that I'm now looking at it to see whether there's any give. And the only give that I can actually see, because the house is so narrow to begin with, it's a tiny house, right? Where they're cramming in a lot of rooms and very efficiently into a tiny house, right? I was looking at how then could you play with the height, which is higher because of this requirement to lift to comply with floodplain regulations. And in the neighborhood, so the neighborhood is characterized actually by buildings that look like 3 stories. So they have a base, they have a garage, and then 2 stories above the garage. This one has, and no occupiable attic. So kind of low attics below a pitched roof. So this one, the main difference between it and them is that the attic is treated almost like it's another floor. So, and so the play is in the attic, because it's not like the design is aggressive about the floor-to-floor heights. 7 feet in the entry level, 8 feet on the other floors. So, this is not for tall people to live in this house, right? So, so that's why I was just looking at, is there some play in the height? And I don't know if there is without them doing sectional studies. Right, so that's really my question. Okay.
Item number 22, 2018-52BZ, 159 Borum Street, Brooklyn. Do I call Johnson also?
Yeah.
Item number 23, 2018-55.
No,
I'm
not,
sorry.
because they really have,
Yeah, they're separate.
they're similar, but
Yeah,
it's
they're-
a separate, they're
yes,
separate
yeah,
issues.
Okay, so just 2018-52BZ, 159 Borum Street, Brooklyn.
Yeah, okay. So on the threshold question of whether the buildings on the site contain, quote, income-restricted units, which are a defined term, we didn't get a very clear answer, as the Department of Building set provided doesn't include parking calculations, and the applicant didn't take us through the as-of-right parking requirements that might have applied. They just said it wouldn't make sense if it weren't subject to whatever it is, 25-25
Old
parking.
25-25
Yeah,
parking
old
requirement.
25. So they didn't tell us why it doesn't make sense. They didn't tell us that actually if we had to comply with the then applicable requirements, then it would have been twice as many parking spaces or something, nothing. So, and then they asked us to consider the regulatory agreement, which is only a 20-year regulatory agreement, where the text is very clear that in order to be an income-restricted unit, it needs to be a 30-year regulatory agreement. And they asked us, well, why can't you include the renewals? Well, but the text says the 30-year. It doesn't say or renewals or the equivalent, so how do we get there? So I wondered if the applicant also explored the definition of, quote, affordable housing unit in 23-911 and see if it applies here. I tried to do it, but it's a very complicated process, and I didn't want to spend the time. I think really the applicant needs to do that. The site plan shows 49 foot 9 inches between buildings where 50 feet is the minimum distance. That's a classic CAD error, because CAD does the measuring instead of humans. They need to also move the note to the string dimension. A note about the relocation of the rear yard equivalent, it has to move to underneath that string dimension, which should be 50 feet. And it should state, DOB to confirm relocation of rear yard equivalent complies with the zoning resolution. Because that was our conversation last time, that the rear yard is between these, equivalent is between these two buildings, and it's supposed to be 60 feet, not 50, and they're reducing it and relocating the rear yard equivalent. The parking space counts actually don't agree on the cellar and first floor plans. They need to correct that. It's showing two different numbers. The parking study was revised, but I don't know in what way, they didn't tell us. It shows a peak demand of 54 spaces, and 67 spaces are provided on site. The board expressed concern that the existing buildings on the site will not be maintained as income restricted for the life of the affordable units on the development site. We asked for a restrictive declaration that would guarantee such an arrangement, and stated also that the parking waiver would terminate at the end of the affordable period. And in this case, it's a completely doable situation because they have so much open space on this lot that they could put the parking that's required. Instead, we received a letter from the applicant and building owner stating that such a restrictive declaration is unnecessary because the building is eligible for property tax exemption that will apply for the next 40 years commencing in 2022. We were not provided with any documents showing that the exemption for that duration is in place or its terms. The owner states that it is in its interest to maintain the Section 8 this project-based Section 8 to be eligible for the exemption. So I ask if that's the case.
Then why not?
Then why not execute a restrictive deck, right? We had a project exactly like this one recently where the owner attended and the owner volunteered, I will sign the restrictive deck. This is what I do. I maintain these affordable housing units, so what's the difference whether I have a restrictive deck or not? So it is necessary.
And they didn't state a reason why it would be to their detriment to have it in their letter, just that it's unnecessary. So I wasn't satisfied with that.
Right. And then also, we also spoke about limiting the term of the grant to the occupancy of the buildings with income-restricted units. And I didn't know if there are any open environmental issues.
Received the EAS, but it needs some minor corrections, so we should be getting it.
Anybody else?
Next one? Wait till you finish.
Okay.
Yeah. Item number 23, 2018-55BZ, 222 Johnson Avenue, Brooklyn.
So most of the comments that I made at the prior that have to do with the restrictive deck applies here. So again, the owner submitted a letter stating that the restrictive deck isn't necessary because they would like to apply or intend to apply or something for the tax exemption. And so again, there's no reason why they shouldn't have a restricted declaration requiring that the units in the existing buildings remain income restricted. But there's also, in this case, unlike the other, based on the parking study, a shortfall of 19 parking spaces. We directed the applicant to increase the on-site parking to meet that demand, and they didn't do it. This is a mixed, instead what they did is they wrote saying, oh, the additional stackers would be expensive. So this is a mixed income project being built in tandem with another mixed income project, and the parking is for the market rate units, not for the income restricted units. So I don't see any reason why the project can't cover the cost of providing the required parking for the market rate units. So it's there. Anybody else?
Just with regards to the tax exemption, I believe they did receive the approval for the tax exemption. This is through the city council
Yeah.
hearing for the UDAP process.
Right.
So they need to provide us with that document.
No, they
which is
did. They
what-
gave us a city council resolution.
Right.
Which approves the right to apply for the tax exemption. That's not the same thing as having the tax exemption and
Typically
signing
they
the
do.
document that commits them for the next 40 years to maintain the units. It's simply city council agreeing that they're allowed to do that. And it doesn't actually come up until 2022, the ability to apply for this continued exemption. So unless they can execute something in advance, we wouldn't know for another 3 years whether they actually executed, entered into.
On this application, did they satisfactorily address the threshold question of whether the building contains
Same
income
issue.
restricted? So the
Same exact, I'm sorry, yeah, same exact issue of not digging deep enough into finding out whether they can establish these were income restricted units. And the parking seems to be the easiest route, but they need to get us there.
Okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh. Item number 24, 2018-95BZ, 120 MUN Brooklyn. This being adjourned.
Yes, they have open hazmat, air quality, and noise reviews pending also.
New cases, item number 1, 2018-58BZ, 1182 Broadway, Manhattan. It's a legalization of a PCE.
Right, they opened in November of 2015. We have proof of service of initial hearing to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. The hearing notice was also posted in the building lobby and elevator. The community board waived its recommendation. We have DOI. I may have missed fire department on this. Maybe there was a last minute.
FDNY, there was an approval form from FDNY dated 2017.
No, but FDNY's letter of no objection.
No, we don't have an
we didn't get
FDNY
this.
letter.
So we need fire department. This is 1182
I
Broadway.
thought I did have.
Oh, yes?
Oh, we do?
I'm looking for it now, too.
All I have is that there's an approved central station and emergency exit and fire extinguisher and
but-
Yeah, I thought I
sprinkler,
saw that.
But we don't-
I had letter of no objection.
We want the letter from fire department.
I don't
as
see
opposed
that.
to-
Maybe I didn't.
Yeah, so maybe they
We'll just review.
may not have seen it, so it's okay, so they can, okay. I just want to clarify, though, that the posting was both at the residential lobby and the commercial lobby, because there's two entrances there. I want to make sure that it was at both.
We do have, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to jump in. We do have the fire department letter.
Fire department LNO.
What's the date on that letter?
The letter is January 31st. The fire department has reviewed the above noted application. The application for the PCE, AKT, to occupy the second floor with a total occupant load of 60 persons. The fire alarm and fire suppression combination standpipe sprinkler system, standpipe sprinkler system were inspected and tested satisfactory to the department's standards. The fire department has no objection to this application.
Great.
Great, okay. Okay, so, right, so I want the applicant to respond to whether the postings were both in the residential and the commercial lobby. They should, this is a note to our council. There's a description at page 3 of the statement of facts in the of the noise attenuation.
Yes.
That should be copied, pasted into the resolution. It's a very clear description. We do have a certificate of no effect from the Landmarks Commission. The acoustical details on page T-105 should be keyed into the floor plan, which is on page T-102. So we know where the acoustical work is being done. And they need to clarify the total gross floor area of the PCE. Anybody else?
Item number 2, 2018-165BZ, 25 Hudson Street, Manhattan. This is also a legalization of a PCE.
That just opened in October. We have proof of service of initial hearing to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. The hearing notice was also posted in the building lobby and elevator. Community recommends approval. That's true.
Yes.
For P0.
No, I may have, no, I may have copy pasted about whether the notice was posted in the lobby. I'm not sure if that's a true statement or not. Okay, Community Board recommends approval. We have DOI, we have Fire Department, letter of no objection. We have the certificate of no effect from the Landmarks Commission, because this is in a historic district. I'd like them to indicate the attenuation measures. Oh, this is for council again, that the attenuation measures that are stated in the statement of facts on page 2 are noted in the resolution. And I just want to note for our council that there is a separate set of sound attenuation drawings that should be combined into one
Okay.
for the final package. Anybody else? And this is actually a yoga studio with extensive sound attenuation measures, as an example.
Great.
Okay, may I go on?
Uh-huh.
Item number 3, 4311BZ, 1926 East 21st Street, Brooklyn. There was a submission made that we emailed to the commissioners, and then Henry did one again, so I don't know. Does everyone saw that?
I'm not sure.
Well, he made a
Okay.
hearing folder, sorry.
Yeah, he said that he created a new folder, but I didn't find the folder when I went remotely into the folder. I'm not sure that it makes that much difference, but, we'll find out, because I know this is a complicated case. So this is a continued hearing for an application that was taken off calendar in 2011 due to the destruction of the building by fire. We have proof of notice of this hearing to officials and neighbors, but I don't know whether the officials received, or really according to our rules, should have received the updated application, just to get them back in speed, because I think the application now looks different than the one that was filed in 2011. In 2011, the Community Board recommended approval, so we don't know if they would feel the same way today. So I think they should be given the opportunity to consider this if they want to, so the applicant should send them a copy of the revised submission. So I actually found the submission very annoying, to euphemize what I really meant to say. The statement of facts describes the fire and demolition of the existing building in 2011 and the filing of drawings by an architect in 2012 with Department of Buildings, and then leaps to the discussion of the so-called Turnpike case. It makes no mention of the fact that the house has been reconstructed, or to what extent it has been reconstructed. I instead had to find this out from Google Satellite. Hence my extreme annoyance. What we should have is, because now we actually have an existing building in place, which is a different thing than the so-called Turnpike case, right? We should have DOB-approved plans compared by the architect, not the lawyer, by the architect to the existing condition drawings and the survey that was prepared prior to demolition. So we know that the DOB-approved plans match the existing existing condition drawings and survey from 2011. So in other words, that the house was rebuilt in terms of the non-compliances in the same location. Then we need a set of as-built drawings that the architect compares to the DOB-approved plans, because we never know whether they build according to the approved plans. I see also that there was a ZD1 filed with Department of Buildings in May of 2018 that amended the original set of DOB-approved drawings. And I don't know if the ZD1 matches the existing conditions drawings against which we compare the proposed. So yeah, go ahead.
And also, it's confusing, because if you go to the site, it's clear that the building that's there is the proposed building.
Right.
Or some portion of the proposed building, because you could see the windows on the southern side of the building are the windows that are in the proposed plans, not the existing plans.
And, you know, if the building that's an as-built is legal, then, okay, it's an existing building that they come to enlarge. But if it's not legal, then why are you assuming we're legalizing it and building illegally, and why behave like that, and so on? So the architect also has to provide, so the things that I listed above, the architect has to provide. I don't want the lawyer to do it. It needs to come from the architect to review their own drawings. The purpose is to establish, as I said, that the as-built conditions, to the extent they're non-complying, are legal non-compliant conditions that were reconstructed. So I actually don't think that the termite case, and this is one reason why the application is so infuriating, when we didn't know that the building, because the applicant didn't tell us that the building was rebuilt, we were reading, thinking that it's a vacant lot, and somehow or other, we're supposed to figure out how to apply the special permit to a vacant lot. And so maybe that termite case would somehow be useful, though I actually don't know how. But instead, the applicant or the attorney kind of blindly mentions the termite case, not understanding that it has nothing to do with the current situation.
Well, the suggestion that they mentioned the termite case would have justified using the pre-fire plans
Right.
as the existing plans that they could use as their jumping off point, but they didn't do that.
Right.
They mentioned the termite case and then went to a new set of existing plans that who knows if they ever existed.
Right.
Like they should have, after mentioning termites,
Connected the
gone to
dots.
the pre-fire plans and said, that's why we want to use these pre-fire plans, and we want you to consider the proposal in light of the
Right.
original building that was there. And then that would have been open and shut pretty much.
Right.
Aside from some shaping that you may want to do to make sure it conforms to the neighborhood character. But other than that, that groundwork would have been laid, and that difficult part of the case, to me, would have been fairly seamless.
Right.
But
But then they made it difficult. And you know, the other thing is that as long as the building was built with, so as we know, DOB has this interpretation of 5441 that you need to rebuild within 2 years of the destruction of a non-complying building. So as long as the building was built within 2 years, or whatever, in a way that DOB considers that you've accomplished the task, whether it's full construction or getting a permit and doing some amount of work, because I don't actually know what their standard is, but as long as it's rebuilt within that 2-year allowance, then you've got a building that's a legal non-complying building, because you just put it back, and it's existing. So in a lot of ways, we don't need to get involved if it was demolished, you know, for instance, if it had never been here, and it was a house, it's never been here, we didn't even know about it. House burns down, rebuilds it to its existing non-compliant conditions, then they come here for a new 622, then fine, we can start with that, right? But they didn't set it up like that, right?
they would have had to file it as a new number then, because it would
Yes.
have been a completely new application. So it's kind of like they're straddling the fence of what they want to do, not quite sure which way to go.
Yeah, right. And so, so then just to get to the substance, the FAR is greater than 1, so it needs to be brought down. It's not appropriate to ask for more than 1. The existing conditions plans show a side yard of 12-foot 11 being reduced in the proposed to 9-foot 2, yet is shown as an existing condition. So I don't know what was built. Are the existing conditions drawings accurate? Are they mislabeled? You know, what are they? Do they represent the pre-fire conditions and the replacement building? Or is that something else? It's just too confusing. We don't know what's going on. Nothing's properly labeled to help us figure out what's going on. So again, we need a set of existing condition as-built that indicate the amount of floor area currently on the site. They're proposing a 24-foot 10 rear yard. They don't justify the reduced depth. There's no information to justify that. Section AA on drawing A12 appears to show much more new construction than the plans do. The elevations shown on the proposed as existing don't look like the approved DOB set. So where are the approvals for that work? If that's the existing, maybe it's not the existing. I don't know. We are being asked to do too much, and now this is just me venting. We're being asked to do far too much forensic work on our own. That's not our job. And this time, the architect absolutely must attend, and if the architect doesn't attend, we adjourn the hearing. I don't want to talk to the lawyer about architecture, about drawings. Okay. Anybody else?
I think they did not provide adequate justification regarding the neighborhood character, regarding the FAR, rear yard. The zoning analysis sheet is also missing, so those are also some of the basic.
Okay, go on.
Yeah.
Item number 4, 2018-140BZ, 100-03 North Conduit Avenue, Queens.
Okay. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community Board recommends conditional approval, which includes discussion of a side issue related to a rezoning and the Community Board's requirement for a restrictive covenant. This is not related to our action, and it wasn't related to the city planning's action either. This is kind of a side discussion between the Community Board and the developer. The Community Board's relevant conditions are the canopy is to set back an additional 5 feet from the property line fronting on North Conduit. The detached convenience building is to be set back 7 feet from the rear of the canopy. The curb cuts were accepted at 30 feet wide. All on-site signage for vehicle entry and exit from the site were accepted as per the layout presented, but I don't know if that's what we have here. All site lighting was accepted and to be directed to the site and away from adjoining residences. So the applicant should tell us whether the drawings that we have are responsive to the Community Board's recommendation. We received one letter of objection from a neighbor concerned about noise and odor in a residential area near a school, odor from the traffic fumes. Fire department provided a letter of no objection. This application is for a special permit that is available in certain C districts, and at the moment, as of today, the site is in an R district. The city council is expected to vote on the zoning map amendment to create a C22 overlay on February 18th. So shouldn't we be waiting?
Yes.
So we don't have jurisdiction, so have a nice day.
We have an objection from DOB? What does the objection say? If it's,
Yeah,
I guess
the
kind of how do they
objection
get
would be
here
s-
if
right.
there's no C?
It's probably that you just need to go to the BSA and BSA fixes all. But I don't know, I need to go look at that. Because DOB doesn't necessarily know they're applying for a special permit, it could have been for a variance.
DOB
Right.
section is proposed automotive
Yeah.
filling? Okay, filling, sorry.
Filling.
My eyes are getting blurry. Filling station with accessory convenience store use is contrary to ZR 3210 and requires a special permit for Board of Standards and Appeals pursuant to
3210
72.
cites the commercial.
Yeah,
regs.
commercial,
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
It's because the applicant obviously wrote that.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't have jurisdiction, so I could read my comments, but I don't know what to do because we really can't hear this until we have jurisdiction.
So are we postponing the case?
I think
we should postpone it.
Yeah.
So But you've all reviewed it.
Yes, we have reviewed it.
So you
But
might as well say your notes
Okay.
down.
Without
right?
jurisdiction,
if we don't have jurisdiction,
We don't-
it's okay.
I don't think it'd be completely academic at that point.
Sure.
Yeah, what if the
Yeah.
council revises the,
Yeah, probably not likely.
So
It's not likely, though.
adjourned to after,
Yeah.
postponed rather, till
Right.
after. All right.
That's the lesser of the two options. That's the better of the two options.
So this is being postponed?
Till after the city council vote.
When is the city council?
February
18th.
Yeah. So it's actually quite a funny, I mean, I get why they did this simultaneously, because that would be perfect when if they
Maybe they
were to
didn't
get
think
these
it would
both at
get
the same time. Yeah, they didn't expect it to go to city council so fast, I guess.
All right.
Okay. But because in terms of us, well, they only submitted this in August, so,
I think we moved very.
yeah.
But should we postpone it ourselves or
No,
have them
we-
ask?
No, we're postponing because we don't have jurisdiction. We can't, there's nothing for us to discuss.
Yeah.
There's no special permit available in an R
Yeah, I
district.
understand, but
Yeah.
if we don't have jurisdiction, should we postpone it or?
Of course.
No, we have to.
I think
Oh, I
They've
think-
already paid.
I think Commissioner's using the other option, which the dismissing it, but I think we can.
Ah, I see.
I think that's what we're referring to. I
I
think
see,
Right.
I see.
No, I don't want to penalize them for being off by a week, right?
No, I'm
And
not-
it's,
I'm not
it's in a
saying-
certain way, oh, you mean that they shouldn't have applied until after they,
well, technically,
Technically.
Commissioner is right. If they, at the time of their filing, they don't have standing to ask for what they're requesting, and that's what time that counts. I don't think we need to be that strict. We're not
No.
very strict on evidentiary rules, so.
yeah.
I think
And
we-
arguably, it's in a pre-application stage until we hear it, right? So it could be, sometimes it can be here for like years. City planning's the same, right? You can be at city planning for years, even though, who knows, the situation isn't ripe. But until it gets actually heard by the commission, it doesn't, I don't think it matters, right?
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, doesn't matter, next week, they'll probably be okayed.
But we may not have room on our calendar.
We won't
for
have
some
room on our
time.
calendar, so that's the way it goes.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, frankly, the applicant should have alerted us, then we wouldn't have calendared it for the day before, the week before. We could have calendared it for the week after, and then this would have synced better for them, but anyway. Okay.
Item number 5, 2018-155BZ, 1123 East 27th Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, we have proof of service of initial application to officials, add of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors, community board recommends approval. There's a typo on the chart, on the statement of fact for the proposed floor area, it's missing a digit and the comma's in the wrong place, or whatever, the decimal point's in the wrong place. With the exception of the increase in height of the attic from 8'4" to 11'4", where the 933 feet of additional floor area is actually located. This is a modest straight line extension into the rear yard. The attic height, though, I think it's too much and should be brought down. I'm trying to understand the roof line drawing, the roof drawings, the attic set, and the elevations in concert. And I don't actually think that the roof plan reflects what we see in the sections and the elevations. And I keep looking at it and trying to figure out where the lines are. It just doesn't look right. It shows a roof that's flat from the front, whereas when you look at the roof plan, it's peaked. It's pitched to a peak, so I just don't think it's accurate, right? And that's one reason why I think the attic height could be brought down, because it's showing a clear height of 11 feet in an attic. And for no reason, because you don't see an extreme pitch that it needs to clear. So they should provide an axonometric of the proposal to clarify the roof line, and the axonometric needs to turn around, so we see it from at least two sides. The sectional indicator also for the longitudinal section is in the wrong place and in the wrong direction, which therefore leads you to believe there's lots that's not correct about the drawing. The rear yard study shows the site surrounded by houses built to 24-foot rear yards. and even less, but it does not indicate whether those houses rise to the height of the proposed, which is 3 stories. So in order to justify being that tall in those shallow rear yards, we need to know what the other houses are like. Other comments? No? Okay. Great. Done?
Yep.
Yep.
This concludes the public review session for February 11, 2019.